Good afternoon and welcome to this month's show. During today's show, we will discuss mobility technologies in the federal government. With me today on the show are Anil Karmel, the Deputy Chief Technology Officer at the National Nuclear Security Administration, Rick Walsh, Mobility Lead at the U.S. Army, Vaughn Noga, the Chief Technology Officer at EPA, Tom Simmons, the Area Vice President for the Public Sector at Citrix, Chris O'Connell, the VP of Federal Sales at Appian Corporation, and Johnathan Dempsey, Solutions Architect, Palo Alto Networks. Let's get into the show. We're talking about mobility. Let's start with Rick Walsh over the U.S. Army. What is the strategy for mobility use at the U.S. Army, Rick? What are you pursuing to move forward with mobility programs?
Our near-term goal would be to bring in commercially available devices and move towards a bring-your-own-device technology. Mm-hmm. The goal is to move the devices that are currently in the Army out to the consumer, to the edge, to the consumer, so that we can leverage current technology as well as mobile as well as the cloud. Wow,
good, terrific. We'll dig down a little bit on some of the issues around trying to do that as we move into this. Anil, over at the National Nuclear Security Administration, what's the strategy there for mobility, to bring mobility to the workforce?
Well, for context, the National Nuclear Security Administration is responsible for the safety, security, and reliability of the U.S. nuclear weapons stockpile. So, given that context, interestingly enough, we are very interested in BYOD, trying to find that right balance between security and functionality, to where we can secure our enterprise data and provide commercially available devices at a low cost to the consumer, based on the type of information, with the right security protections and controls based on the type of data that we're trying to protect.
Right, you know, that's the BYOD thing is a big topic. And the good news, I think, on that security side is industry knows that is a big issue right now and is looking at solutions for that problem. Tom Simmons, over Citrix, I know mobility must be a high priority for you from where you sit. What are some of the strategies you have to help the government move forward and get some of these solutions in place?
Sure, Jim, thanks. As a technology developer and provider in partnership with the government, our vision is to bring the same kind of reliance on technology and any device over any network scenario to the government. You've got a whole generation of workers coming into the government workspace that have grown up living on some kind of a device, whether it's a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop. And enabling those folks and folks that have been in government for a long time to have access to more than just secure mail and secure browser, but a variety of government applications, keep them available and separate on the same device that they might have their iTunes and personal pictures. Maintain that separation. Absolutely, as Anil said, address all the security issues of accessing government resources and government data, gives you greater productivity in a BYOD concept, a tremendous impact on reducing costs. And then more importantly, underlying all that is just the recruiting and the retention. In tough times, government needs to hire the best and brightest.
You're right.
And this is a way that we can entice those folks to come into government and do the things that they've learned to do in the private sector.
Yeah, you're right. You know, I actually saw some research going on. I saw a device where if you're using your government apps or your professional apps, none of the serendipity stuff works. And then if you switch to a serendipity app or one of your, it shuts off all the government stuff. You know, things like that I think are coming real quick. Vaughn Noga over at EPA, what's some of the strategies you have for mobility to get mobility into the workforce at EPA?
Yeah, I think at the EPA really it is defined by mobility, right? Since last year the CIO really has put the challenge out there, mobile first. Everything we do is about mobility. It's about enabling the workforce to work whenever, wherever, right? So since the last several years, we've looked at all the technologies surrounding how do we equip our workforce to be able to be productive wherever they are. And this is from the desktop to a handheld, to tablets, to application infrastructure, really looking at the whole thing, right? It's not just the device, it's how do we equip our applications to be mobile ready, right? So we could have people out in the field that not only have this device with them, but actually can interface and interact with a system that's sitting behind the EPA's firewall, if you will, sitting in a data center. So really, everything we're doing is about equipping the employee to be productive wherever.
Yeah, things are switching quick. A couple of years back we were saying once we get the bandwidth in the wireless world up, we haven't even scratched the surface on some of the apps that are going to be possible in the future. And this is when we have hundreds of thousands or millions of apps to begin with, and people are saying we're just scratching the surface of where we can go with some of this. Chris O'Connell over at Appian, what's some of the strategies that you're employing to help government programs move forward with mobility?
Yeah, well, thank you. We're very excited about what mobility can bring to the federal government. Like Vaughn said, we want to enable the government's mission. We want to enable the workforce, and we've seen a lot of applications that are data-centric and putting things out on the forefront for the citizens. What Appian would like to do is take a look at the platform and provide the same work automation that we've had for years at Appian. Over the past few years, we've identified mobile and social capabilities as an enabler of bringing more people into the process and the work that needs to be accomplished in order to bring speed to market, to make better decisions. And so we're taking a number of the lessons learned and best practices both in the commercial space and in our federal customer base, and trying to bring those into new ideas in automating both the applications and the data and the mission that's being performed behind the firewall as well. And I think that's a great opportunity right now for mobile devices.
Terrific. Interested in drilling down here a little bit more about that. Johnathan Dempsey over at Palo Alto Networks. How is the company structuring to move forward and help customers move forward in mobility programs?
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Sure.
So addressing mobility is one of the cornerstones of what we're doing in my company, Palo Alto Networks. We are a security company, so we're trying to enable all of these organizations to leverage mobility. It's a very, obviously, BYOD and consumerization of IT is already here. The sooner the agencies can adopt it and mitigate the risk associated with that, that's what we're here for.
That's terrific. All right, well, drill down and hear more about that too. Let's switch over then. And I mean, it's great that everyone's talking mobility, but what are some of the benefits we see? I mean, what is it going to do to improve operations or make the government more efficient or cost? Let's talk about some of those benefits. Let's start with Vaughn Noga this time. Vaughn, what do you see as some of the big benefits that are going to be gleaned by going to mobile workforces?
Well, I mean, when we look at our workforce, right, we have a mission, right, protect human health and the environment. And we have a lot of folks in the field doing just that, right? And so when you look at the old ways of working, they would take a notebook out and they would write notes in that notebook, and they would bring that back with them, and they would enter that information into a system. We want to do it once, right? We want to collect information, capture the information in a device, transmit that to the back end so it can be used in real time. When you look at a lot of the situations that we roll into, if it's a spill or what have you, those individuals are on scene. They've got to be productive. They've got to be able to get information from that scene to the back end so people can make decisions on that information. And really, we're looking at that as a way to increase the way that we operate, increase our efficiency, to make us more agile, right, and how we actually perform our work. Certainly from the back office, right? So we've got the mission side, we've got the administrative side also. We've got a lot of folks who can benefit from these technologies. Again, work is what you do, not where you are, right? So when you look at the workforce, we look at mobility and making people mobile. It can be a life enhancer, if you will, right? People spend less time commuting back and forth to their jobs, right? Especially when you couple that with telework and some of the advantages with that.
Absolutely, great points there. Productivity, efficiency, and I don't know where I work. I work wherever I happen to be, I guess, is where I work. Anil Karmel, what do you think? What are some of the benefits you think you're going to see over at NNSA coming out of your efforts here with mobility?
Well, I think it's really changing the way that we work fundamentally. When you take a look at the way that we've historically worked, when we come into an office environment, we sit in front of a computer, we do work in front of a computer, we answer a phone and whatnot. That really is a fundamental change, or we're fundamentally changing the way that we do work today, in the sense that in this new workplace of the future, when we move to this BYOD construct, we have the ability now to take that desktop and present it through multiple different types of interfaces, whether you're a tablet or whatnot, and take that desktop with us. So when we're needing to process information, when we need to present a PowerPoint, we don't have to run back to our desktop, go get that PowerPoint, go put it on a USB key, and go take it to a conference room and plug it in.
Right.
We take that desktop with us on the tablet, hit a button on this tablet, project it onto a screen. It really sets the stage for a dynamic, untethered workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the days of desktop computers are slowly dissipating here. I guess we probably don't want to have the discussion here about Apple versus Android versus BlackBerry, et cetera, because that one could go all kinds of directions. Rick Walsh, how about at the Army? What are some of the key benefits you see coming from your strategies?
Well, across the DoD, there's the program that's called Base Relocation and Closure, the BRAC program.
Sure, everyone knows BRAC.
So as we BRAC and we relocate people, we relocate their work. So we have a mobile workforce, in essence, what we do. So what we want to be able to do is to take that workforce and give them the ability to work and be productive wherever they are. Okay. And one of the things that we have to do, and one of our larger goals, is we want to move to authenticating the user as opposed to authenticating the device.
Right.
So we use a BYOD moniker here quite a bit. Bring your own device, but that's only going to satisfy a small portion of the Army's business model. What we need to do is what we're looking at is what the new acronym is called as a COOP, C-O-P-E, commercially owned, privately employed, privately enabled device. And in that sense, I will give you a device, you'll use it, I will configure it, it will be secured, it will be operational, and you will do work on it. It will be a work device that allows you to be mobile.
Wow.
And think of it as a really big point. If I can allow the Army workforce to work one day out of the office, that's 10% of your time. Your pay period's a 10-day period. I'm going to allow you to work one day out of that 10, not being in the office. If I can change that and run it into numbers, that's 10% of your time you're not on the highway coming to work. That's gas you saved.
Right.
That's time you saved. That's 10% of the floor space in my office buildings I don't need.
Right.
So think about the cost. If I could reduce my floor space in Crystal City by 10%, how much could I save in rent alone?
Right. I'm convinced all these things, there's so many things that can be done, and I really believe, we have this discussion just about every show, that it's a culture issue more than it's a technology issue to get where we need, because it's intuitively obvious that there's tremendous benefits in that type of an approach.
Well, and with that said, the thing that we find is the difficulty is the traditional work model, I have the ability to measure what you do.
Right.
And part of that measurement is that I see you in a seat. I see you working for 8 hours a day. Therefore, I know you're productive. In the mobile world, I don't get to see you. You're on the road somewhere. You're working someplace else. Right. So how do I change technology? How do I change that mindset of our traditional thinkers to allow you to work 10% of your time at home and trust you that you're productive?
Right.
How do I get there? Right. That's a question I have.
I think sometimes, if you have well-defined tasks, who cares where they're done as long as they're done? Anil, you had a comment on that?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good point that you raised there, Rick, in the sense that as we move to this mobile construct and we change the way that we work, we have to look at some of the capabilities that we have in our personal lives, in the sense that of these social networks that we leverage, your Facebooks or your LinkedIns, and take a look at how we apply that to our government lives, if you will. So within the NNSA, we're building something we call One Voice, a social network for our enterprise to allow us to communicate and collaborate effectively across multiple platforms, to allow us to have that social interconnect and that social fabric via technology to weave us all together.
That's pretty cool. Your own your own Facebook, just with a private one. Vaughn, you have a comment on that too?
Yeah, following on that, one of the things that we've done at EPA last week, we transitioned 20,000 folks into Office 365. It's been out there. I know folks probably have read about it. It's one of the activities that we've really embarked on over this last year, is to get the workforce migrated so they can take advantage of those new technologies, right? Things like Link, being able to do video conferencing from their computer, whenever and wherever. To be able to take advantage of the SharePoint infrastructure to actually establish those communities and have those conversations that they didn't ordinarily have before, right? To bring people together that may share common interests and supporting the mission. So it's really one of the focal points of bringing folks onto this new platform is is create conversations.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. Nice to tell people on that culture issue, if you want trustworthy employees, the first thing you have to do is trust them. Jonathan, what do you think? What are some of the benefits you see with going mobile?
Well, everything my fellow panelists have said is right on the money. I mean, it strikes a chord with what Palo Alto Networks is doing. So, part of my job is to make sure that all of that can happen, but in a safe way, right? Because anytime you open up new resources and new applications, you mentioned we don't even know what kind of applications are going to be out there in the upcoming years. We're here to make sure that those applications stay within their swim lanes,
right,
and that that it doesn't become a new threat vector or a new way of losing protected data.
Sure, because anytime you're doing this, you're going to have the naysayers and your people are going to be questioning, and what you don't want is a major security or privacy breach right out of the box, or it'll put your programs back a long, long time. You need to make sure you think those through proactively up front. So it's good to see companies like yours that are thinking those things through. Chris O'Connell over at Appian, what are some of the benefits you see with mobility programs?
Yeah, I think they've hit it on all cylinders here, and I'll give two quick examples that highlight those.
Sure.
We have a commercial customer, a large retail brand that is global, has 14,000 stores across the country. They were doing site inspections on notepads and paper, digital cameras,
Sure,
going back and kicking off processes, orders. They didn't have transparency to the data, the analytics, and the reporting. Well, they handed all of their inspectors iPads. They then had maps, tasks, directions, did all the assessments, the pictures. Data is instantaneously available. Mm-hmm. There's more collaboration across the site inspectors. Well, we take that application and we apply it over at GSA with Public Building Service. What do? They go do site surveys before going into buildings to lease them, taking pictures, take those best practices, and now you have the ability to save that time both in that black hole period where you're taking
Sure,
your paperwork over to the computer. Now you have that instantaneous results and collaboration for where you are doing the work.
right.
So speed, agility, and transparency.
Sure.
The other one that I would bring up that I think is undersold with mobility is the simplicity of using applications on these devices. That's very intuitive. People understand how to use them because they use them every day. And so with the VA for Vets program, we are at an event with 15,000 job applicants, and we are able to give tablets to 30 temporary employees who have never seen an application to be able to register, direct them, and move them around this conference and get job offers out to them with no training.
Right.
That is something that you can't do with traditional applications or paper-bound processes.
Sure. And what Tom brought up earlier is, when the kids come into the workforce, it's just going to, they're going to just come in and there will be no training at all. They'll be training their bosses as to on the different things they can do. I participated in a panel not long ago. It was that we're beginning to live now in the fifth dimension, and that's a dimension where time equals zero and decision making equals zero. Everything is instantaneous, and that's really where we're getting. Tom, I want to hear from you too, but we first got to take a short break. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. I'm Jim Flyzik here with Anil Karmel from NNSA, Rick Walsh from the Army, Vaughn Noga from EPA, Tom Simmons from Citrix, Chris O'Connell from Appian, and Johnathan Dempsey from Palo Alto Networks. We're talking mobility in the workforce. We were talking benefits. We've heard from our panelists. We have a chance to hear yet from Tom. Tom, it's always dangerous to be the last one because you can just say ditto, but I know you've got some more words of wisdom for us on this one. What are some of the key benefits you think we're going to see with these mobility programs?
So they're developing and increasing every day with technology. When you think back about mobility in the workplace, especially in the government workplace, I'm sure at Secret Service you were issued a pager, you carried a radio. At one point, you were issued a cell phone. Those are all mobility enablers that
Right.
today are converging into a single device, and in a lot of cases, as Rick said, of the employee's choice.
Right.
So one of the biggest benefits that we see in enabling all of this access through a device-independent approach is just that: increased productivity, increased job satisfaction, the ability to put that work-life balance on the device, and, as Rick said, accomplish the things that the Army needs you to accomplish on the device, but also give you the ability to relieve some stress by playing Angry Birds or Solitaire
Right.
or whatever, and not ever fear that those personal bits are going to get commingled
Right.
with the government bits, or worse, the other way.
Right.
So I think the biggest benefit is that productivity aspect of convergence on a single device or multiple devices, but the interface is always the same.
Right.
I get used to doing it a way, my productivity goes up because I can do it that way regardless of what I touch.
Right. Terrific. Great points there. Anil, let's shift over and talk a little bit now about, we heard about benefits and we heard about programs. How about some of the challenges? What are the hard things about going to a mobile strategy? What are some of the things you still need to, the hurdles you need to get over to get where you want to go? What are some of those challenges?
Sure, and that's a very good question. So I think the first step is, understanding what the problem set is. So, the way we quantify it is, first you have to know who the user is, what data are they trying to access it, where are they trying to access it, and how are they trying to access it? What are the protections and controls that you need to employ for that data set? So when you look at the problem set from a who, what, where, and how, you can then employ the correct data protections and controls, again, around the data, a very data-centric policy around that information. So employing a containerization strategy for mobile devices, employing a display strategy for virtual desktops, to where the desktop resides in the data center as opposed to residing on the endpoint. So you're really protecting the data,
Right.
not so much the device. So
Right.
really it comes down to quantifying the problem as it applies to a data-centric realm, and then presenting that information to the device that happens to be in front of you.
Right. So the challenge is understanding that data that needs to be protected and focus on the data. Rick Walsh, what do you think? What's some of the big challenges? What are the things that are hard to do to get where you're trying to go?
Within the Army, the most difficult hurdle to breach or cross is user expectation. Particularly in the senior leadership arena, they all like to have the shiny new toy. They're great. They're the iPads, the Galaxies, the Blackberries. They're all great tools, but that's just a tool. The real trick, or the real work, has got to be done in the politics and the getting the people to understand that I can be productive when I'm mobile. It's this device, this iPad Mini, is a secure device. It does, and I have to leave that security up to the security professionals. But what I don't want is, I don't want business professionals making security decisions, and I don't want security professionals making business decisions.
Right.
We tried that in NMCI.
Right. Right.
I was there. Great tool, great idea, great concept. We didn't understand what we were doing. We don't want to do that again. My friends at NMCI, forgive me, please. This is a great tool. Leader expectations, managing what you're going to get, what the tool is going to allow you to do, and where it's going to allow you to do work. Managing that productivity and those expectations is my most critical part. And today, we all know we're in the physical crisis. That is a big problem.
Yeah.
I can't do this without money. I can't do this without help.
Right.
I have to get more productive, and I have to do it today.
Right. Good point. Very good point. Vaughn, what do you think? What are some of the big challenges over at EPA that you feel like you still need to get over to you really get where you want to be?
Right. So I'd like to say there's technical challenges. We've talked about some of them.
Right.
Certainly, security and privacy are things that we
We're
have
going
to
to talk a little more about security
Right.
here in a few minutes.
We have to be aware of those, and we have to build it in. I think when you look at the technical, a lot of things that we've been doing in the EPA is build it in, don't bolt it on. Right. So you really got to look at your total strategy for how we're going to support the mobile workforce and actually build it from the ground up, and we've done that. We can enable someone to access our network from remotely, and it's everyone in the agency has that same ability. There was a time when it was just a subset of folks who had the special little card that got them into the EPA. That's no longer the case. We made sure last year that everyone had an equal opportunity to remotely access. And now with the recent deployment of My Workplace, which is our 365 solution, people will be able to work more remotely on their devices. I think one of the biggest things that we have to deal with is non-technical. It's the social side. We've talked about it, right? How do we manage? How do we get managers to manage differently? And I think that's the things that are going to be the largest struggle. And as those individuals are more exposed to, hey, we're managing expectations, we're managing for the work, not if the person's sitting in their seat. Right. And I think that's one of the things that, it's a transformation of the workforce and of the management within the workforce.
Yeah, terrific points. 89 radio shows, 89 times we've had a conversation about culture shifts and generations and things like that being a big issue for all moving forward with all technologies. Tom, Simmons-Citrix, what do you think about some of the challenges? What are some of the hard things or things that you see that are difficult that we need to get done to really get where we want to be?
How long is this show? So I think the reality is that the challenges are many and varied. And we have to be able, as Vaughn said, have an overall strategy where we're going to build it in, not bolt it on. The kind of challenges that we're working with our government partners on are things like, how do I manage the device? Right. Whether it's a government-issued device or a bring your own. Right. How do I provision that device from the user's perspective? So unified storefront, the ability to authenticate, and as we said, know who you are and what you should have access to. Having that iTunes kind of an interface where you have a myriad of options that IT sets as what's available, and then let the user pick without sacrificing security. Then we talked a little bit about the culture change of, if I can't see you, do I know you're working? I think one of the aspects of mobility is, I'm going to leverage different technologies. So video conferencing over the web, over a device like this becomes a more important tool as we try to collaborate and increase productivity. The cultural change that Vaughn said about, all right, I've got changes that take place. Provide a collaborative workspace leveraging social media where employees can share success stories, where they can share the frustrations of a changing work environment, and do it without monitoring and without going through a help desk and all that. These are all the new things that help address the challenge of creating greater independence and greater self-reliance on the IT consumer for the things that we make available to them.
Yeah, all common sense things too. I'm actually, if I'm working with some companies that want to talk to a government official, whatever, I'm now telling them, develop like a 20-minute WebEx and schedule a WebEx appointment rather than a meeting. It's more efficient, it's more productive, it's quicker, it's to the point. You don't have to go through all that scheduling stuff and changing scale, and it's a more efficient use of everyone's time.
And then record it and post it out there so that the folks that weren't there for that 20 minutes can see it whenever.
Yeah. Johnathan, what do you think over at Palo Alto Networks? What are some of the challenges you see in moving forward on some of these programs?
Ditto. Everything, absolutely, there's just so many to choose from. I'll be a little controversial and say one that's maybe we haven't talked about or thought about. You go from policy down to technology, but in the middle is procedure. Right. And we really need to change how the boots on the ground, how they do things. Right. We have great vision here, great policies are about to be unleashed, but we're still using fairly dogmatic procedures that really address old technology and old technology problems. Right. So how do we make that leap? I think that's something that we really need to address.
There's some things specific to government too. I mean, certification and accreditation and things like that. When you're talking about, mobile apps that are popping up, by the minute, when you have to go through big procedures for certifications and accreditations, things like that have to be looked at and addressed and need to be dealt with a lot different than the way they've been addressed in the past. Chris O'Connell, what do you think at Appian? What do you think are some of the key challenges that need to be addressed here as we move forward?
Well, I'll start with the positive
Okay.
in that we're seeing the tide turn, and that it has been very easy to say no, to not move forward and not try to figure it out. And what you're seeing here is a number of leaders across the federal government that recognize that mobility is here,
Right.
and it is the future, and so we need to address them head on. From the commercial side, where we have a platform that we're trying to deliver and maximize the value for the government,
Right.
to gain efficiencies and provide the workforce an enabling technology to access their data, to perform their daily work. Our goal is to try to abstract a lot of the technical challenges that are in the workplace, like the device choice, BYOD. Those are things that can be handled by industry. We are deploying our applications with a checkbox that says mobile enable to iOS, to BlackBerry, to Android. No code, native applications, so the agencies don't have to choose.
Right.
We're deploying these applications without code so that you're abstracting that transitional in between of design and technical people coding from the requirements
Right.
to the actual business problem that's being solved. Enable the business user to define how the application is created. So those are the things that we're doing in order to enable the workforce to get their job done on mobile devices, as opposed to making it a technical problem for
Right.
the government to implement.
Right, and it's great seeing those devices being prepared for that future to work in different, protocols and so forth. And if we can just solve the interoperability issue in the airspace, it would help things go a long way. Get away from those days that I remember where we had 15 antennas on the Secret Service agent car, and if you want to talk to the FBI, talk on that radio. If you want to talk to the local police, talk to this one. If you want to talk, hopefully those days are slowly going away here. Let's talk about security, because security is such a big deal when we talk about moving this direction. When first talking about this, there is a need to go this direction. Chris brought up the point about efficiency, and I think cost alone. I mean, the days are gone where you're going to be buying someone a desktop, a laptop, a cell phone, some PDA device. We don't need all those devices for every employee. They're coming together. But yet security seems to jump out there as one of the reasons to say, hey, slow down here. We got to get the security stuff right. Vaughn, how are you building security into your mobile strategy to try to overcome that issue?
Right. I mean, I think security is an innate quality of any strategy. It's got to be there, right? And you look at what the federal government's already done. I mean, they've got a lot of initiatives underway to help us be more secure. I think one of the things that we're looking at, and I think it goes to Anil's point, is we need to start protecting the information, right? We've been very device-centric, right? We're going to approve the device. We're going to make sure that its encryption is FIPS certified. We've done all these things, and it's always been around the device, right? And where we really need to shift is, how do we secure the information? I really want to get out of the device business, right? It's very difficult, especially as devices are released. It just seems like every day there's a new device on the market. It's very difficult for any organization, and I would say both corporate and federal, to keep up with that type of turnover within the manufacturing community for those devices. We really need to shift our focus and protect the information, right? And that's where we need to get to. I don't have the staff, and really, we really shouldn't be focused on the device. We should be focused on the information. We want to get out of that business, really. And I think there's several folks here who are actually looking at or have solutions or are doing a lot of good thinking around that. This is really where the government needs to start adopting those instead of trying to go off and create our own one-offs because there's been some sort of mandate that says it's just a little bit different.
Right.
I think one of the things that we've identified, especially as we've gone to a cloud solution for email, yes, we're a little bit different, but they're doing it pretty good on the corporate side too. And yeah, we do things a little bit differently, but we really need to look at other opportunities within the space.
Right. No, I think you're right. Focus on the data. Get away from that. We lost the laptop with all that privacy data. Well, let's focus on the device, protecting the data. So if you lose the device, the data still is not usable.
Yeah, quite frankly, I mean, we need to get out of the device business because you bring up a good point. I look at just the help desk side of it, right? When a user has a hard drive crash, and we need to replace the desktop or the hard drive, how many hours do we spend trying to rebuild this thing and restore their data, right? What it needs to be is we drop the laptop or the desktop or whatever top on their desk, we plug it in, and it synchronizes itself. It replicates applications back. We need to get the help desk people away from the desk so we can get their users more productive, and wherever they take the device, they can be secure. Again, security is not just within the walls, it's also when they travel, and really that's part of the strategy, is make sure we can actually patch those devices wherever, whenever.
Sure. Terrific. Well said. Mike, Rick Walsh, what do you think on the security? How are you addressing that security issue when moving to your mobile programs?
As we move towards mobile within the Army, and I just want to come back to a real quick point before I go there, is technology in the mobile world changes quickly, and that's why security is so critical. If you look at devices basically have a shelf life of about 6 months before new devices hits the market. So an Apple, an Android, or a BlackBerry is replaced about every 6 months. They put a new device out on the market. If I'm going to get in the commercial world, I've got to be able to adapt to that. So I've got to have the security practices and models in place to allow me to do that. Operating systems traditionally are changed or updated about every 3 months, 30 days to 3 months. So there's a new OS change about every 3 months. Applications change every 30 days. That's the speed at way mobile works. I have to adapt my security model to incorporate that speed. I have to be able, I can't take 18 months to approve an application. I can't take 3 years to approve a device.
Right.
I have to be able to look at security. How does it fit in this new world? How does it fit in this technology? And that goes back to the point we made earlier, and I think everyone has, is I have to protect the data.
Right.
I have to know least access responsibility. I have to know what you're going to do, what you're going to see, and how you're going to access it, not from what device.
Right.
And that's our goal in the Army, is to move towards that kind of environment.
Right. Anil at NNSA, it sounds to me like we're converging here towards focus on the data. You've already brought that point up, but how are you building security into your strategy here?
All right, so I'll echo my panelist sentiments in the sense that we are focused on securing the data, not the device. Really redefining MDM not simply as mobile device management, but rather mobile data management.
Good point.
So how do we employ that in a construct that embraces cloud? So in our agency, we're focused on delivering something that we call Your Cloud, which is a secure hybrid community cloud across cloud service providers, brokering both our on-premise capabilities and commercial cloud service providers through a unified control plane which we control, allowing us to put our data into secure enterprise enclaves with the appropriate protections and controls around that data, coupling that with an app store to present information and applications back to our end users and constituents, giving our users the ability to consume servers and services and desktops through a self-service portal, delivering that information to end devices based on what they're trying to access, with the security protections and controls baked into the enterprise enclaves hosting that data. And to make all that real, again, echoing some of the statements that were stated here, you have to change our culture, change the way that we consume this information, change our processes and the way that we do business, and employ the right technology and have the ability to insert disruptive technologies in our capability through our broker to give our users, to empower our users to make technology decisions that make sense for them.
Terrific. I like that. I like that idea of Your Cloud. That's a good way to approach it. I like these shows because I feel like I get smarter every time I do one. I learn something new every time from all of you. Johnathan, I'd like to hear from you in industry too, but first we have to take another short break. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. Back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio. I'm Jim Flyzik here with Anil Karmel from NNSA, Rick Walsh from Army, Vaughn Noga from EPA, Tom Simmons from Citrix, Chris O'Connell from Appian, and Johnathan Dempsey from Palo Alto Networks. We're talking mobility and moving to a mobile workforce. Johnathan Dempsey over Palo Alto, I know you guys, security must be a key priority for where you sit. How are you viewing security with mobile devices?
Well, Jim, you hit it on the head. I mean, this is why we exist as a company. There have been many security companies before us. There'll be many after us, but we're filling a specific gap that has existed for years, and that's inside your traditional perimeter. There's been this assumption that IP addresses and ports are applications and users, and we're here to say that to get to the next generation security controls that you want to safely enable things like mobility, you have to whitelist applications and the functions within those applications. You have to identify authorized users by their username on the network, and then identify the threats and data leaks associated with those users. And extending that traditional perimeter, redefining it and extending that to your mobile users.
Sure.
So now they're within your perimeter, right? And you're doing all these great things and safely enabling what they're trying to accomplish every day, which is business of the organization and the mission.
Just transfer, just expand as the devices go out to the edge, the security policies, procedures that are in place go with the device. Chris O'Connell, how about that Appian Corporation? How are you addressing or looking at that security question when it comes to mobility?
Well, it's critical. You cannot afford a breach. You have a security perimeter that is continually evolving, and you do need to have a model that addresses how to secure that perimeter on a continuous basis. It's no longer that time period where you have long dependencies on trying to ensure that you're secure, and that's at every layer. You do need to do the data, but you also need applications that have all the right certifications and components at every level to make sure that each person has access only to what they have access to. And so we've grown up in the federal government. That's where we started. We're on the SIPRNet, and we're on DIS's cloud, providing mobile capabilities today. And so it's impendent on us to ensure that we have a continuous cycle from an industry perspective to be in front of it for the federal government.
Proactive.
But let's also push forward. Have a risk-based assessment. There's a lot of work being done today from a mission perspective that is not classified information, that can get out there and in the hands and take some lessons learned and apply those to how you are addressing that security perimeter that's ever moving.
The good news too is, as I said when we started the show, that industry knows that the security is a challenge on mobility, and industry is putting a lot of attention on different solutions. Talking about industry coming up with solutions, Tom Simmons at Citrix, how are you approaching that security in the mobile world?
So security historically has started with the architecture, as Vaughn said. If you build it in, not bolt it on, you get much better results. And Citrix legacy has been about the ultimate secure proposition is the data never leaves the data center. So we've built a company around providing access remotely to data that is behind the perimeter, inside the firewall. And we monitor and authenticate at the perimeter, with strong authentication, so we know who's coming in and what they're doing, and we can terminate access at any point. But as we migrate to the cloud era, and as Anil said, focus more on protecting the data, there are use cases and scenarios where that data needs to leave the firewall. It needs to reside on a device somewhere. So then it becomes the security questions of, okay, which devices do we allow this to reside on? PDAs, I use that term with a bunch of my 20-somethings, and nobody knew what that was, but smartphones and tablets and even laptops. So, how do we create secure enclaves within those devices so that I can make sure that whatever's there is being seen and accessed only by the authorized user? And if it gets compromised, I have the ability remotely to wipe that away and eliminate the threat of user data and government data sitting on a laptop that's been stolen out there. So all of these are capabilities from technology today. But if we go back to, we start with the premise that protecting the data by keeping it behind the firewall, We build an infrastructure for application and data access. We can build those secure use cases around when that doesn't work, and we get much better results.
Very good, and good points there. And Tom, you just made me feel old because I still call them PDAs. I mean, I didn't even realize that word was on its way out. All right, we've got about 11 minutes left here, and we always like to end the show by talking about where this is all going, sort of your view of the future here and how you see things. We'll start with you, Johnathan Dempsey, over at Palo Alto Networks. What's your vision here for where this is all going to go? What's the workplace going to look like down the road because of mobility?
Well, it's going to move at the speed of thought, right? I mean, that's what we're all pushing towards, and we're here to, safely enable that path to productivity and unprecedented responsiveness. And so, what comes with that, we kind of hit on it before, but is just ever-changing landscape of applications and threats, and being able to mitigate those as they appear, and because those are also happening at the speed of thought.
Yeah, living in a world where decisions in the time of zero, time equals zero. Chris O'Connell, what's your crystal ball look like? Where's this all going? You thinking strategically out to the future. What's the workforce look like?
I think very quickly we won't be talking about mobility because it will be
just natural thing,
natural, common stance of how we do our business. And so we're seeing already today in our customers and federal agencies that these devices are now becoming our windows to our infrastructure, to our data, to our applications, and being able to access it wherever we are. But in addition, providing that same tie to our citizenry, to our customers, and having them access not only data that we're getting from the government, but being able to provide data back into the government that is in turn kicking off additional processes, collaboration, and knowledge-based sharing in order to make decisions about where we go as agencies, how we better support our customers, our soldiers, our citizens, from Consumer Safety Product Commission, ensuring that we have products and incidents that are occurring are being managed and tracked to the back end, to our Air Force personnel working on airplanes at depots, being able to get safety regulations and new components that are coming in, ordering parts, being able to take inventory, all on these devices. It's going to be transparent. We're not going to be talking about it because we're already at that point where most of our data access and is coming through these both today, but definitively in the next couple of years here.
Yeah, terrific. So we're going to wake up one day and it's here. And hopefully that means I don't have to dial the phone and say, press 1 for this, press 2 for this, but we'll have interactivity thing going on. Vaughn Noga-EPA, what's the future look like for you with these programs?
So I would agree with what Chris said. I mean, eventually we're going to get past the discussion on mobility. Mm-hmm. We're going to get past the discussion on devices, and really the vision going forward is how do we enable the workforce so they can work smarter, right, and not harder, right? I mean, we put things in front of them and we steer them in a way that we want them to do their jobs, when in reality, water finds its level, right? We've got really creative employees. We just need to provide them the instruments for them to be successful. And I think that's what these are instruments to be successful. We need to develop the infrastructure. We need to secure the environment. We need to develop the applications, right? And we also need to look at the business processes, right? I think we touched upon, we can give you this device and we can enable you, but if you're still looking at the same old business processes, right, you really haven't done anything to affect to change the organization, right? If you're still doing it in an antiquated way and you're not taking advantage of these new capabilities, it doesn't mean you're working any smarter, right? You're just, it's the way we've always done it. We want to continue doing it. So I see that's the next big focus really is how do we change business processes, right? How do, instead of conforming to the way we used to do it, we look and embrace these other ways of doing things. That's the when you look at things like Salesforce and other applications like that, that's changing business process,
How
right?
do
It's
we
working smarter.
unleash that corporate knowledge and let everybody contribute?
Exactly.
Tom Simmons, what do you think at Citrix there? What's the future look like for all this?
So as we embrace the cloud era, I think we stop, as everybody has said already, we stop focusing on mobility and we focus on mobile work styles. The reality of today is that if we architect our access for a mobile work style, the traditional assumptions that we've had historically about work styles in the office just come along with that. It used to be I was wired to a desktop on a local area network to my application suite and all my data.
Got to find somewhere to plug something in.
Exactly. If we assume that I'm going to build to a mobile work style, when I come into the office and I have that RJ11 jack where I can plug into, all of the benefits that I have mobile come with a wired connection. My app suite it moves away from monolithic, centralized applications to micro apps that are self-provisioned. You know, Office 365 and what EPA has done.
And Anil's Your Cloud.
I was going to say, the Your Cloud concept are all just that. They mean different things to different users, and if we give the user the ability to provision it and change it based on their needs, IT stays in the focus of managing access, managing and protecting the data, and not answering the help desk call because it's all self-provisioned.
Good, I like that. So it sounds like an exciting time. Anil Karmel-NNSA. Anil, what's your crystal ball look like? Where's this all going down the road?
Well, just basically echoing the sentiments of my fellow panelists in that when you think about, you know, what our role as IT practitioners are, you know, today we've been entrusted with protecting this information, providing a secure environment for our constituents that consume our data, both internal and external. That role is fundamentally changing in the sense that it's now all about the constituent making that decision for themselves, where IT fades more into the background, providing self-service vehicles to consume that information, both internal and external, whether it's via API or whether it's via a portal where they can manage and provision both servers, services, applications, whatnot, deploy micro applications. And IT becomes the enabler to deliver these capabilities to those constituents, both internally and externally, laying down that foundation of innovation, right? Providing that perfect intersection between cloud and mobility to where the user now doesn't have to worry about where do I go to get stuff. They know intuitively where to go. We can we have that timely insertion of disruptive technologies through components that are, again, owned by IT but owned in the background.
Very good.
Right? And what we're doing is we're enabling what I've heard the most recent generation termed as generation feed to get that information based on what they need. So as we move into servicing generation feed, we provide this capability that allows you to have work become something you do, not someplace you go.
Cool. Very well said. I like that. Good thoughts there. I see it as IT steers the user's row. Rick Walsh, what's the future look like for you? It almost looks like the future sitting in front of you here, or at least the beginnings of it.
Part of the future is, for the Army, our goal is to get to enable the proper use case environment where I have of the business model that allows a soldier to do his business as opposed to an intellectualist like myself, where my job is basically thinking and writing, whereas a soldier's job is actually doing something. There are two different use cases. We need to create the environment that allows those individuals to do the mission that they have at hand. How to drive a truck, how to repair a truck, how to write policy. How can I do this wherever I am? How can I extend my workspace? How can I put a soldier in the field who's had very little training and give him a mobile application that takes him through the process to take a tire off a $10 million truck when he's had very little training, but he's got a video training tool right there with him? We're developing those apps. The other thing is that we need to have, and we mentioned earlier, is we need to be able to, within these use cases, to find how those applications are going to work. We talk applications, but they don't exist. The Army's mission applications today exist in the traditional IT environment. They don't exist in the mobile environment. They have to be rebuilt. They have to be, and it's back to changing the way we think. It's changing the way we do our job. How do I And that's our goal. How do we get there? How do I move? How do I enable the Army to think on this device, this workspace, as opposed to work on this size workspace on a wired as opposed to a wireless environment? All the things, applications, technology, devices, user, access, all those make up this environment.
Right.
All those things have to be worked on concurrently. I can't focus on a device if I don't focus on the access. I can't focus on access if I don't have the applications. All those things have to happen at once. We have to work all those things together.
Great, great. Some really good points there. I appreciate that. Let me do a really quick summary here. Although saying that we're past mobility already, our mobility show is so popular, Tom, we're going to have to come with a new name here, I guess, for us. But anyway, very quickly, what I heard is mobility's here. We're thinking mobile first, and it's no longer something that's coming. Benefits are obvious: productivity, efficiency, speed, agility, transparency, all those things, cost savings. Challenges in the area of data protection, and of course that big one around culture. And we also heard about user expectations, and everyone wants the new toys, but you have to manage those expectations and set them. Security, I heard that we're getting there. It's now no longer this big thing that's the big roadblock. It's just a matter of getting it done. And in terms of looking out to the future, I think what I heard is that mobility will just become the standard way of doing business and just a standard process. We need to do some thanks here. I first want to thank our panelists for taking time from their busy schedules to be with us today and